What is up, everybody, and welcome into a Friday edition of the All NBA podcast, part of the ALLCITY podcast network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Timothy Legler. Legs, it's Friday. Happy Friday to you. How you doing?
Happy Friday. I'm good, man. Light schedule last night, but you couldn't ask for two more, dramatic finishes than we got last night, so we're going to get into that.
I love it. We are going to get into that. We're going to talk a lot of Pacers today. The Pacers are every show we kind of hone in on one or two teams. Today, that's going to be the Indiana Pacers, the league's best offense. I don't want to spoil too much, but they might show up in my favorite teams to watch so far this year list. They might be very high on that list, actually. We're also going to talk, Hawks Magic, which had a very interesting finish. We're going to talk Bennedict Mathurin. And then, as we start to add layers to the show, it's going to become more and more interactive. We've got Legler for an hour spitting nothing but knowledge about the NBA and about basketball. So we want to make this show where you can send in your questions. Today, we got some great questions from our listeners that he's going to answer on the air, give his perspective on. And then on Fridays, as we always do, we're going to debate who won the week around the association. But first, we are presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with promo code ALLNBA, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, Legs, let's get into this. Last night, the Bucks, who have been reeling on the defensive end all year, get matched up with the number one offense in the NBA, and the result was a very high-scoring affair. 126-124. The Pacers pull it out at the end. Milwaukee, I thought, Giannis, who goes for 54 points and was dominant all game, got a little clunky down the stretch, had a couple of turnovers. What did you see from this game that stood out to you?
I think the first thing that I would say is, as I'm watching the game, I'm literally having this dilemma in my head, right? This battle between, are guys have they become that much more skilled, or is the defense in this game awful? That's what I was torn, because the shot making was incredible, and there was across the board, there were so many guys banging out shots. But then when you really watched it, a lot of them were good looks, and even what Giannis did, obviously the big night, 54 points, and he was trying. I think there at one point he got 54 early. He needed one more basket to break his career high, and he couldn't quite get there. Right. But I'm watching him, and I'm saying, if there ever is such a thing as a guy getting an easy 54, that's what it felt like to me in watching Giannis Antetokounmpo. There didn't feel like there was a lot of resistance, but I don't want to not give credit to the talent offensively that was on the court and on display last night. So I think that's the first thing for me in watching the game. Just this track meet where there's shot made after shot made on both ends of the floor, and you're wondering, at any point, will someone get a 4 to 5 possession stop, strung together? And it didn't really happen. And it turns out, Indiana, they dug their way out of a hole. They kept scoring all the way through the wire, and they get the win.
Well, let's go back to Giannis really quick, because 54 points, we don't want to get numb to it when a guy puts up those kind of numbers. But to your point, and Indiana has done this a handful of times so far this year in the games that I've watched them, where they have decided they're going to guard guys straight up. And for 3/4 of this game, Giannis, as great as he is, and by the way, they don't have somebody to guard Giannis. This isn't like they have a good matchup, so we're going to go one-on-one and not send help. They had bad matchups. There were switches, and they weren't sending help. So I have to imagine some of the strategy through 3/4. They adjusted at the end, and it made a difference. But some of the strategy was deliberate, that they thought, okay, we're probably going to give up 40 to Giannis tonight. Instead, they give up 54, and they had to adjust. But that seemed deliberate to me.
Definitely was. And you're right. Personnel dictates that to a certain extent for Indiana. They don't really have that guy. Nobody really does, but some guys, are built a little bit more for that, to at least offer better resistance at his initial point of attack or his first step. They don't really have that. I think for me, that what was kind of head scratching, and every time I see Giannis have a night where it's just he does what he wants at will, I say, the one part of his game that is still the area you want to force him into is making passes off the dribble. He's not great at that. He will turn it over. He'll run people over, trying to, get deep into the lane. And you put that extra body on the edge of the lane and load up and wall up on him. He'll make those mistakes and force kickouts. And see, and look, they obviously have guys that can shoot the basketball. They have around him for a number of years. But let's see tonight, what do those guys have? And are they banging out shots? And are you willing to commit and live with it beyond, they make a 2 or 3 and now, okay, forget it. Let's stay, we're not going to leave these guys. Like really commit to it for a game or a half and see, number one, on the straight line dribble drive stuff. Like, are you getting that guy to the edge of the lane that's on the corner shooter and forcing the kick to the corner? Because I still think he's reluctant to make that pass because he's such a voracious scorer that maybe he commits an offensive foul. Maybe he throws it at somebody's feet out in the corner. They don't get a clean shot. And then also on his spins, Giannis loves to spin. Both directions, he loves to spin. He goes middle, he spins back to the baseline. He goes baseline, he'll spin back to the middle. There should be somebody in his lap coming out of that spin every time to see if he has the ability to pick that thing up under control and get it to the other side of the floor for an open shot. I don't think Indiana really dared him to do those kinds of things. And as a result, he gutted them. 19 for 25 from the field. I mean, and he had a great night from the line, too. 16 for 18 from the line, which is a little bit of an anomaly for him. And here you go, 54 and 12. Now, look, Indiana wins the game. So afterwards, Rick Carlisle and those guys probably feel like, well, yeah, that's what we wanted to accomplish. We did it. He can have what he wants, and that's how we're going to play him. We're not going to allow those guys to just destroy us from the three-point line. They made 9 threes. That's a low number for Milwaukee.
And on the other side, the Pacers made 20. They shot 48 of them, by the way, which is an insane volume. But that, to me, it just seemed clear that was the strategy. And they almost went too far. They did have to adjust down the stretch, but it did seem like they were content to live with, all right, Milwaukee's going to get a bunch of 2s. We're going to run and space you out and get a bunch of 3s. And the only one of the backfires of that plan was Giannis, and this is courtesy of NBA University, Giannis had 6 and 1s last night.
Wow.
So the Pacers not only were giving up the 2, but they had some really dumb fouls. I think they had a couple of and 1s on dunks. If you got Giannis, you better foul him. He better miss. You better put him on the line for 2, not for the extra 1. But the strategy seemed to work. And then to your point about loading up with the help, attacking the spins, it's a good one. Last night in the fourth quarter, though, they sold out and were trapping him at the logo. They were trying to make him make plays far from the basket, and I was kind of surprised at how much he struggled with that one down the stretch, making plays there. But let's go over one other question I have for you, and I'm curious what you think. Early in the season, the Milwaukee Bucks look like a horrendous defense. What is your insight as to why they have become such a bad defense this year?
Well, all right, so let's look at first. The first thing you'd look at in that situation is there's a coaching change. Okay,
Yeah.
so that could play into it. I mean, there's a certain identity with teams and a certain continuity that Budenholzer had with that group, right? So that's part of it. There's a coaching change, and maybe there's a different philosophy. There's different calls. There's different terminology. There's different things you're going over in practice. So that part is different for a new coach. So that's part of it. And then you start looking at personnel. You don't have a Drew Holiday there, right? Dante DiVincenzo was a guy that really helped them defensively with his energy, and he was one of the better perimeter defenders on their team. Now, look, they still have enough guys that can do it, but losing Holiday's big. And then I don't think Chris Middleton is the impact defensive player that he once was. And I think so. There's a little bit of a tail off there, but that's nitpicking because they still have Antetokounmpo. They still have a great rim protector in Lopez. Malik Beasley likes to get after it defensively. Jay Crowder's been known for his defense in this league for a long time. Pat Connaughton really guards and gets after it. So they have more than enough guys. Bobby Portis competes. They have more than enough guys. So I think maybe it's more the coaching change is affecting their mentality about defense. And it's early in the year. Also, listen, I also think some of this is when you're scoring a lot, you're scoring easily the way that the Bucks do, and it's early in the season, and you're kind of, you're playing for bigger picture stuff. Maybe they haven't really put their foot on the gas on that end yet. So you add all that up, And I think you're seeing it. I can't give you a great answer on it, but I think the coaching change would be where I would look first because the continuity they had with the previous staff.
Brooke Lopez has looked especially frustrated, I think, as the year has gone on. Last night, there were a handful of plays where, Pacers get a wide open layup off of a blown coverage, and you could see him like putting his hands in the air, yelling at guys. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of, to your point, where is the focus? Scheme changes, bringing him up the floor a little bit more, maybe creating more rotation when he's been such a good drop defender. Some things to keep an eye on. I do like, you mentioned good defenders. You know who I really like on their team? I like Marjan Beauchamp, and I like what I saw last night from Andre Jackson. I like what I saw from him in the Summer League as well. But those two guys, I know they're both green because they're young players, but they have great length. They're really skinny and super mobile, and they just make hustle plays. They came back in that game. They were actually down quite a bit. They came back in that game in large part because of just the energy those two guys brought to the game.
Yeah, they were getting smoked early. I mean, they couldn't get a stop at all. Indiana came down, did whatever they wanted to. Bennedict Mathurin had a great start to the game that kind of got them out of the gate. And Milwaukee, you're right. They found themselves, I don't know what the biggest deficit was maybe 18, maybe 20, maybe it got to 20.
More, yeah.
But this was early in the game, and obviously, and you and I think talked about this one time, like there's never been an era in the NBA that a 20-point lead means less than it does now.
So true.
There are more 18 to 20-point leads erased on a nightly basis in this league than we've ever seen, and it's because obviously the 3-point shot and the prevalence of that and how quickly you can make up deficits, and also I think it's not quite as physical on the perimeter, so there's a lot of freedom of space. So if you and everybody in the league is so skilled now, that lead doesn't mean anything, especially early in the game. Like go up 20 against Milwaukee, when they cut it to like 6 and Rick Carlisle called timeout, like he wasn't even surprised at that point. He's like, yeah, I kind of expected that. I knew this was going to happen. And because that's just what the league looks like. Yeah. But their defense certainly was not up on their toes at the start of the game. And Indiana is a very good offensive team, and they took advantage of it.
So let's go over to Indiana because we want to spend some time on them. They're such an interesting team, but I want to start with the defense. They're obviously a great offensive team. When we talked about guarding Giannis straight up, and I'm trying to figure out why they're doing it and this or that, and I do think it's the shot variance, 3s versus 2s or whatever, but I think another part of it is they're pretty small. And when you get into rotation and you have a small team, you have more ground to cover. You're less intimidating as you run out on guys. And I wonder if that is part of it. As we look at this Pacers team, their trajectory is that this is an up-and-coming team. They're not title contenders. So I don't know that they're worried about plugging all gaps. They're probably more worried about figuring out who their guys are going forward and building an identity and a system. But to me, I don't know if they can be good on defense given their personnel. I think they can be phenomenal on offense. I think that's sustainable. But I don't know if they have a defensive upside. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be talking much about them, in the defensive realm like this year as to, wow, have you seen the Pacers defense over the last 10 games? Like, I don't think that's going to come. And that's actually interesting to me. I mean, Rick Carlisle is a guy who's been in the league forever, won a ton of games in this league, and he's a very, very smart guy, very good offensive coach. But one time early in his career, he was more like defensive minded. I think he's kind of succumbed, like a lot of these coaches succumb to, like, this is how you win now in the NBA. It's more about, can you get to a certain number? Now, you can't be a total sieve defensively and be treated seriously in this league, but you can definitely be a mediocre defensive team and still have a great year, be relevant, be a playoff team. You can still do that. And on given nights, if you've got the best offensive players late in games, and I think Haliburton's a guy that can really dictate and control things late for them, then you got a chance to win some games. They're 6-3 out of the gate. I don't think anybody expected them to be 6-3. I didn't talk much about the Indiana Pacers before the season. That's going to be done because they are a high-octane offensive team with an elite-level floor leader in Haliburton who can pick you apart with his vision, or he can get 30, or some nights both.
Yep, some nights both.
Other than him, Adam, they got a lot of nice players. I think Mathurin is a guy we're going to get into more. Mathurin, I think, has a ceiling that's going to continue to move as people watch him. Everybody else, though, I kind of feel like what they are. Like Obi Toppin. Yeah. I texted Tom Thibodeau the night they drafted Obi Toppin in New York, and I loved him so much in college. I said, man, you might have just – I think it was the 7th pick maybe. I said, you might have just got the best player on the board, and they were very excited about him. Now, here we are. He's in the second team, not seeing a ton of growth out of him. So I don't know if that's that book's written, but he's another guy I look at a lot of potential. But it's really about Haliburton, Mathurin, and then some really nice role players that fit in well for them. And because of Haliburton, this team's going to hum offensively. And that's how they're going to win games. We're not going to get too much into their defense, I don't think, all year.
Let's go back to Haliburton here. He is, I would say, there's a mold of passer right now. Trae Young, Luka Doncic, phenomenal passers, but it's them. The ball's in their hand, and it's a style. And then there's another mold of passer that I would say has contagious passing. Jokic is one of these guys, right? He's a great passer, but it kind of gets everybody moving the ball. I think that Haliburton is in this category as well, a contagious passer. He's not just holding the ball, directing this or that, although he can do it. He makes quick reads. He cuts off ball. He moves. He just gets the ball moving, and then he's the best in that system. I'm so high on him. And here's the take. He's young. He hasn't been in the league long, and he's captaining a number one offense in the league. I think he might be one of these guys that is always captaining a top 5 offense every year, a la Steve Nash. I'm not saying he's as good as Steve Nash, but Steve Nash was a guy that he's just going to have a top 5 offense, whoever you put around him. I think Haliburton might be one of these guys.
It's a great call on him. And, I said it before we came on. I said, have you seen a guy in your memory that had more like a funkier looking game that was this good? Like there's just, when you watch him, right, he's like this herky-jerky start-stop stuff. He's got these long, skinny legs like a flamingo out there. And he's got a shot that certainly isn't something you'd make an instructional video out of, right? But he's incredibly accurate with it. Hit the dagger 3 last night on a deep step back. But it's the thing that sets him apart is his ability to make every pass on the floor. And there aren't that many guys in the league that can do it. I mean, there's a handful of guys. Luka's in that category. LeBron James is in that category. Haliburton is in that category. And you need length and size to be able to do it. And he's got that. But then you have to have this innate ability to be able to see everything peripherally, know ahead of time where the defense is going to move. And then the last part is like the velocity that you need to get the ball from point A to point B. Yeah. Like it's a big thing. I talk about that a lot because I was a shooter and I liked having that ball delivered crisply because it gives you extra time. Haliburton can do all of that. So, he can score, he can defend, he can do all those things. It's his passing that sets him apart. And I just look at his numbers this year, Adam. He's only had one game under 10 assists on the season. And here's another impressive stat. Only twice all year has he had more than 3 turnovers in a game. A lot of these games he's got 2 turnovers or less. For a guy getting 10, 11, 12, 13 assists in a game on a given night, to get 2, 3 turnovers,
lots of possessions.
Right, making great. And these aren't like, he's not a guy who's playing safe with the ball. He's throwing difficult cross-court passes, pocket passes, lobs. He's doing all of that. Those are susceptible to turning the ball over 5, 6 times. And you wouldn't hate him if he did turn it over 5 or 6 times. He doesn't do that. So, man, you're right. It's very, very rare you see a point guard, that's got this entire package in one body. Haliburton is elite.
The other thing they have going for them is they play a very spread offense. And I've never been the biggest Miles Turner guy. I think he's a very good player, but I've never been that high on him. I think he's in a great system. Like, he really brings this group together with his floor spacing. He's been, in my opinion, reading the court very well in a lot of these pick and pops and different things. And I kind of like this style for them. Mathurin can score, Turner can pop, Bruce Brown can penetrate or can shoot, and Obi Toppin brings the speed and athleticism. And then off the bench, you got a bunch of shooters. So this lineup, the reason I think that if they're not going to be number one on offense, I think they're going to be near the top all year, is because they play a style that breaks the game. I mean, I think 5 out is a game breaker for most teams. They get up 48 threes in a night like tonight. Like, they know how to spread the court and make you run around. And then they have somebody in Haliburton that can completely take advantage of it. So to me, I mean, I'm curious what you think of Miles Turner, but for me, they have the personnel to run the system. And that's why I just think it's going to be this elite offense all year.
I love Miles Turner. So I think I'm definitely higher on him than you, and I always have. And the reason is the consistency that he gives you at that spot. And here's the thing. You don't have to run anything for Miles Turner. I'm a big fan of guys that find their ways to production without having the game stop for them so that it's their turn. He doesn't need it. He can pick and pop. He can space out on an ISO. He's good. He's a good shooter, like trailing the play. And every now and then he'll go give you that pick, slide, dive to the rim for a dunk because he's athletic. And then on top of it, he's been one of the best rim protectors in the league, like during his time in the league. So I think, what more do you want out of a center? He's like, for his career, right around 30 minutes, just under 14 points, 7 boards, 2.5 blocks, 50% from the field, 78% from the line. Sign me up for some of that, man. When you look around the league at the center position, the guys that are doing better than that statistically are guys that you're going to have to slow things down for, right? And it's going to be them on this possession. And look, some of those guys are some of the best players in this league, like Embiid and Jokic. I get it. A lot of teams, they don't have this in Miles Turner. They have guys that you don't need to run plays for. They're not nearly as productive as Miles Turner is. So I think he's the perfect fit for this team. It seems like his name's been on the trading block for the last 8 years. Right. His name is constantly up, but guess what? He hadn't gone anywhere. And there's a reason for it. It's not because there's not a market for him. Teams need it. It's because Indiana, at the end of the day, knows all the things that I just said are true. This is hard to replace because he's so consistently productive for them, and he likes playing defense. He likes being that last line of defense, which a lot of guys just don't give that to you.
And the irony of it, you mentioned you've been on the trade block, been in rumors, this or that. The irony is I just think this is a perfect team for him. Like this specific way they play, he is the perfect guy to be running it. The other thing they have, all these things we're talking about, 5 out, they're taking 48 threes. They have a lot of different creators, a lot of different guys that are empowered to take the ball off the bounce. This looks like a fun team to play for, and they play with a joyfulness. And given where they are in their development, again, not a contender, but they want to make the playoffs. They want to make a statement and kind of start building towards something. Joyfulness is such an important part of basketball at that stage. It can't be a slog. You need to have discipline. It needs to be work still. But to me, I watch all these guys and they look happy with how the game is being played. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're shooting so well from three. They have so many guys. When the ball is popping and everybody's involved in it, I just think it elevates everybody's effectiveness. And that's what I see from this team.
Couldn't agree more. It galvanizes a locker room. I've been on both sides of the spectrum as a player. And when you capture that special feeling that guys trust each other, and what happens is you understand the mentality of when it's my turn, I expect to get it. Meaning when I'm open, like I'm the next pass. When you run action, like the next pass is one more supposed to be made and it's supposed to come to me. I expect that to happen. Conversely, you should expect me to do that for you as well. And when you can create that and nobody feels like there's any agendas, there's no agendas for anybody on the court, which I think I feel safe in saying that describes their roster. When you've got that, you might not have superstar wing scorer like a lot of teams think you need to have in this league, or a superstar big like the two guys I mentioned, Embiid or Jokic. You might not have that. But if you've got a point guard that hops it like this and enough good offensive players that shoot it, and you play that style of unselfishness, you can do great things in this league offensively. And that's what Indiana looks like to me. And that's why I think you said they're so much fun to watch.
It's a funny comp because I think these two coaches are polar opposites, George Karl and Rick Carlisle. But this team reminds me of the 2013 Nuggets that had Ty Lawson and Danilo Gallinari and just a bunch of good players that spread you out, 5 out, shooting lots of threes, running and gunning. And it's kind of funny that Carlisle is a guy leading a team like this. But that's a great coach that can kind of do a lot of different styles. Let's take a break because on the other side, I want to get to Bennedict Mathurin, who you identified as a player you thought was very interesting coming into the year, and I want to hear why. And he had arguably his best game of the season last night as a two-way player. So we're going to dive into Bennedict Mathurin on the other side, as well as a couple other notes from around the league. First, I want to tell you guys about DraftKings Sportsbook. The wait is over. Basketball is back. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub. We've got the in-season tournament tonight. Those are some of the most fun games. You know teams are going to be locked in. You know you're not going to have like a sleepy, it was Friday night and they weren't paying attention. They're going to be locked in. So you can look at that slate and make your bets. You can make a same game parlay, or you can bet on all the in-season tournament games tonight as part of this multi-leg parlay. Basketball's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code ALLNBA. Really helps it out if you use our promo code ALLNBA. New customers get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code ALLNBA. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensed partner of Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 21 and older, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions and responsible gaming resources. All right. What I've enjoyed about this show is we have a passion for the game. We like to break down the details, but we don't always like the same types of players. Everybody has a mold of player that you like or dislike. Bennedict Mathurin would not have been on my list of players that I would have found most interesting, and he's not my mold of player. Now, he had a great game last night. I'm curious what it is that because you like him, I take it. I'm curious what you see in him that makes you so intrigued.
I think. Look, the first thing that you have to have in order to get on my radar when you're a college player getting ready to come into the draft, or after you now get your feet wet a little bit and I'm watching you, I have to see the competitive nature. And believe it or not everybody has it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how many guys don't have it. Yep. And that's kind of done with you. It doesn't mean you won't have a good NBA career and put up numbers and all that kind of stuff. That special something isn't quite there. It beating in your chest. He had that. I could see that in college coming out. I saw him enough to know that this guy likes to compete, man. He does not like to lose. So we talked about this with Anthony Edwards a little bit, right? You got to have some of that in you. He has that quality. So now let's just talk about then what's at his ceiling, his skill set overall. I just think he's got a lot of bounce, obviously. He was known more for that, I think, in college than anything, like his athleticism. He put you on some highlights. But I was watching him and saying, I like the way his stroke to me was close enough to being like a really good shooting stroke that a few tweaks once he gets to the league and gets around people that are a little bit higher caliber helping him. I think he has the chance to become like a really, big time 3-point shooter. Yeah. So I liked his stroke. He's got the bounce, the stroke. He wasn't necessarily great at creating with his handle or creating his own shot for himself. He's already better at that now in a year, just in a handful of games than he was coming out. So I know he's putting the time in. And I think that the physical package that he's in, the strength, his ability to absorb contact, that translates well when he drives and finishes. Now, we can get into this, but his free throw numbers are down this year. I think it's something he needs to start to focus on. They're down significantly from his rookie year, and that's the only reason his scoring numbers are down, because everything's pretty much the same across the board. Shot attempts, field goal percentage, 3-point percent, all that. But he's just not getting to the line as much. So hopefully he's not settling too much. He's not being, not active enough. But that's something he needs to work on. But his physical just stature, to me, lends itself to a prototypical NBA two guard that's going to have a lot of success. And I'm starting to see now he's getting on the glass. He's taking on
11 boards last game. Yep.
Last two games, he's averaged 24 and 10. You're getting that out of your two guard spot. That's high level production. He also, in the game, he took on the task on several possessions in the fourth quarter of guarding Giannis. And he got a huge strip on a play when Giannis tried to ISO him at the top of the key and drive on him, and he raked down and came up with that strip late. So I think he's taking on the challenge. He likes to compete. I think he's got the physical tools and he's got the physical stature that are going to enable him to do certain things athletically in this league. So I'm a fan, man. And it's fun when you like a guy and then he plays as well as he did last night. And I had told you before the game last night, I want to watch Mathurin tonight. You're kind of like, okay, interesting. I'll take a look at Mathurin maybe a little bit more. And thank goodness for me, he had a great game, so I don't look like a fool.
It's happened a couple times on this show that Legs has told me, hey, let's talk about this guy tomorrow. And then the game, he pops off. So Legs, he's pretty good at this, predicting what's going to happen here. The thing about Mathurin that I don't like, and again, I'm trying to figure out if I'm over indexing because I like there's specific styles I like and traits I like, and trying to be open to this. To me, he seems best when he stops the ball. And this is the thing that I wonder. Like, he's a very good isolation player. He likes to play with the ball a little bit. He has he gets a guy on an island and he'll do some stuff before taking a step back. If you watch his isolation possessions, he takes more contested threes in those situations than I would like for a mold of player. That being said, he's pretty good at it. It's not like it's a weakness of his, but I do wonder when you see this up-tempo style, the moments where he pops the most for me is when he makes quick reads, when he catches on the move and attacks. But it seems to be that's not his nature. Do you feel he needs to be more of that? Or do you like that he's a change of pace guy that can hold the ball and take advantage of switches?
I think if I were to look at the area of his game offensively that I want to see growth, it's weird. It's going to be a weird thing because you're going to think, how in the world are you noticing this? All right. But this is the way my mind works. And this is how I watch a game because I was so intent on watching him specifically last night. I bet there were half a dozen times in that game when they got a defensive rebound or a steal or some sort of change of possession on their defensive end. And now here they go. They're off to the track meet. And he's starting that in an advantageous position, meaning above the 3-point line defensively. So he's got a chance to get out. He ended up a half a dozen times like not understanding how to run the floor, where to run the floor, what slot am I in, and looking over the wrong shoulder for the basketball. And I was kind of like, it's really odd. Like because I'm saying if he was wider right here, that ball was going to be advanced to him against a backpedaling defender. And that's when he is going to excel because he's got so much upper body strength and explosive ability. And he can stop. If you want to back up on a rim, he'll stop at 18 feet or a three-pointer even on the break. But he didn't get the ball because he was in the wrong slot, running a weird way. And you could see the guard kind of looking up, but they can't advance the ball. And then he would just circle out to the other side where now he's just kind of standing there camped out and he's not involved in the possession. I think, and if you just talk about half a dozen times a game, if that's his MO and his pattern, I watched enough tape on him this year to know that. My goodness, think about that. For a guy like that, that's a scorer. Right. To give him another 4 to 6 opportunities, maybe where he could have been in a more advantageous position if he just positioned himself properly. Well, now you're talking about another maybe 2-3 quality shots. Now you're talking about a guy that's averaging 18 points a game. That's how fine a line it is in this league when you have the ability, if you're not taking advantage of your opportunity. So that for me, the isolation stuff takes too many step back threes. That basically you just described the entire league. That's the whole league that does that in ISO, okay? And that's just kind of the modern day player. That's what they do, and they work on that stuff, the side steps and all that all summer, and then they want to do it in the game. That's just the way it is. I want to see him attack more in the open floor or turning off a ball screen, going to the rim downhill, getting somebody's chest and getting to the line, and then those opportunities in the open floor. Position yourself better. Get wider, get ahead of the ball, and make sure you're turning to the inside of the court so they can advance you the ball because they want to, especially Haliburton. And now you really have somebody on their skates as you're attacking them and taking off and getting into their chest and getting to the rim. So that's kind of a weird technical thing that I'm seeing in him, but I really, really think it's legit. I haven't said that about too many players, maybe ever, since I've been doing this. He definitely didn't have a good feel in the open floor last night.
Well, it points to, I think, the larger thing I'm talking about, which is, this isn't a perfect metaphor, but I like comparing scorers to running backs and receivers. Running back meaning the ball's in your hands and what do you do to kind of get to the rim and do this, whereas a receiver is somebody who moves off ball in a way that sets themselves up for open shots. And I think players, especially players like Mathurin, they think in terms of when the ball's in my hands, what do I do with it? When oftentimes half of your points, especially in a system like this where the ball's popping, you have great point guard play, both for the starter and off the bench, that if you work before the catch, if you really learn how to read the court, run the proper lanes, cut the timing, the screening off ball that's going to open up, when you learn those things, that's where you get the most points in the NBA. And so I feel like he's one of those guys that, to me, that's the part. And I also feel it's one of those things that more often than not, if you're deficient in that part of the game, I just feel like very few players become proficient in it over time.
I hear you. It's a fair point. And it's like the thing that you talk about when you use the word feel, right? Feel for it.
Yeah.
And can guys improve their feel for the game? Yes, they can. I understand it's probably not something you want to bet on in most cases, but I've seen it enough. And I think what you draw on to think that he can figure that part out, there's no doubt that he looks hungry to me. Now, some
Mm,
of the guys that don't
right,
have the feel early in their career, Adam, and we might notice and say, "I doesn't look like he has a feel," and then 5 years later, they still don't have a feel. You know why?
right,
Because they're
right.
not really grinders, man. They're not grinders.
Mm,
They're not taking that. They're looking at that film at home before they go to bed. They're not getting in there early and doing that, working with their staff and looking at that, watching themselves and learning how to improve those details. Most of those guys that don't have a feel, they don't do those things. So they just never have a feel and they get by because they're
yeah,
talented. I think Mathurin has a little bit more hunger to him than that. At least I hope he does, because I think he's got a chance. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a superstar. I think,
sure.
though, he's a guy that you can pencil in as your starting two guard for a long time and you're going to be set, because I also think he wants to get really good defensively.
Well, let's get to that part because for him to be that, the offensive part, he's talented enough that I think he can be that, even if it's flawed, and he, in my opinion, can get a lot better. But he's still really good offensively. He's just a talented offensive player. Defensively, Halliburton's not the best, even though he has a lot of length, but he's your star. You're going to build around him. I think you need a good defensive two next to him. And last night, there was a great write up on the Patreon account, Murder She Wrote. Caitlin Cooper, who does a fantastic job of breaking down the X's and O's of the Indiana Pacers. I highly recommend following her. Did a breakdown on his defense last night because he has not been a great defensive player this year. But last night, it's not just the strip that you're talking about on Giannis, some of the big stops he got late, but it was even on Middleton. He did some nice things of adjusting throughout the game to take away. Middleton likes to go over his left shoulder and get to the middle. He was taking that away and forcing him away from the middle. He just did some solid things in that game defensively. And to me, he's a guy who his worst games are like a 0 on defense. I mean, really, really bad. But last night you saw that he could actually be a good defender with his size and just with a little bit more focus on that end. Where do you see his upside as a defender?
And he falls into a category of a lot of guys that, and this is the truth because I've seen it. I lived in that world. There's not any accountability for them defensively as they rise up through the high school and AAU ranks, right? And that's where it's all decided, right? These elite sneaker circuits. You're on one of those. You're on a team full of loaded 5-star recruits. Some of those guys are going to the league too. And guess what? The coaches, a lot of cases of those guys, terrified of losing that player. They're not going to have their foot up their rear end about getting back on transition defense and keeping the ball in front. No, they're out there to showcase themselves offensively. No accountability. Then you go to a school for a year, in a lot of cases, and you're just not going to be that honed in if you think there's another level to you. So a lot of guys get to the league and you're going, man, based on what you look like physically, why aren't you a lot better defensively? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If you're that quick with your first step, if you're that explosive and taking off on guys, how are you not able to do an adequate job of getting down and keeping the ball in front defensively against these guys? It's because they've never really had to or been asked to. And I think he is showing me early. I do think he wants to get there. Now, look, we can revisit Bennedict Mathurin in March or at the end of the year, beginning
We
of next
should. Yeah.
year, and let's revisit it and let's see his growth over the course of the year, specifically on that end, because I think it's going to tell you a lot about what this guy's DNA is and how great he wants to be.
The other guy, I just want to give a quick shout out. I love Andrew Nembhard. Again, this is when we talk about player molds and like what you like. He's the type of player I just absolutely love. So I'm pretty high on him, and he's earned those backup minutes. He's now kind of a every night key piece of their team and key piece of their roster. And I think he's just going to continue to be that going forward. I think coming into the show, Legs, Caitlin Cooper's a great writer, and it's Basketball She Wrote. And I kept telling myself I'm going to say Murder She Wrote.
Man, I didn't call you out on that. But I was thinking to myself, the Murder She Wrote person is breaking down X's and O's in basketball. I'm like, my goodness, you're talking about multi.
I don't know if she's watching. I'm so sorry, Kayla. I knew I was going to do it, and then sure enough, I ended up screwing it up. All right, let's move on because we have some mailbag questions here, and I want to make this a big part of the show. People come into Legs with some mailbag questions, and I want to start. We have an Orlando Magic question. And last night's, we didn't get to last night's game, but we had a very interesting Orlando Magic question. Let's see. Producer Emma, what do we have here? This comes from Ben Regal. He says, what do you think the Magic should do at the point guard position? Fultz isn't willing to shoot. Black is playing well, but inexperienced. There's a logjam. Legs, last night to me, the Magic, we didn't talk about this game a whole lot. The Magic wilted down in the fourth quarter, as they have done a lot this year. Played great, built a lead in the fourth quarter. It gets to crunch time. I think they scored once over that entire stretch. Point guard play to me is a real issue here. What do you see here?
Massive issue. And, they've got a lot of high picks in this team. They're interesting to watch. They're fun to watch. I think you and I agree. Banchero is the best of the group in terms of upside and what he's going to be in this league. Here's the problem. They've got last night, for instance, they had 4 guards that played a total of 100 minutes. And I'm not counting Ingles. Like, Ingles to me is more of a forward that handles the ball. I'm talking about their actual lead guards or off guards that handle the ball a lot. 4 guards in the game, 100 minutes between them, 7 assists, 7 turnovers. Okay. Now, you don't just go by raw numbers, because some teams run their offense through other guys, right? And so it's a little bit different. That's not the case here. They don't have anybody on their roster. And guys I'm talking about are Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Black. Those are the 4 guys, right? None of those guys are a natural playmaking point guard. Right. Cole Anthony probably the closest of that group, but Cole Anthony likes to get shots up.
He's a scorer,
He's a scorer. And I think in the role he's in, and if he's coming off the bench, I think he's even more going to fall into that mentality. Well, I'm coming off the bench. I'm not going to come out here and try to get 6 dimes and take 4 shots. I'm going to get mine up. So he's more of a scoring mentality. Suggs is not a guy that can run a team like that. Fultz has got decent passing skills. He's not a threat. He's not enough of a threat as a scorer, and that limits you as a passer and playmaker. But that's the case in Anthony Black. He's just starting out. So they just don't have that on their roster. And it is a problem, because you saw at the end of the game, what do they go to in the biggest possession of the game? They go to Franz Wagner in a one-on-one isolation. I'm not dissing him at all. I've told you this before on this show. I really like Franz Wagner a lot. That's not his thing. And he made a good kick out. Banchero missed an open look, and then they lose the game. But that player has to be a higher level player in that situation, whether it's a ball screen or an ISO, which most teams are going to go to. They don't have that caliber player to do that sort of thing where you're going to get quality looks, because some of that's got to be look for yourself. Sorry, Adam, they just don't have that on their roster. I'm sorry, Ben Regal. They don't have that on their roster.
They also don't make a lot of threes. They don't have a lot of shooting. And I think that this makes it especially hard. I mean, we just talked about the Pacers and all these great playmakers that they have. Well, part of it is they have a 5-out offense with shooters all around the court. You have an open paint. The Orlando Magic have a very good front court. They have a lot of good front court players, but not a lot of spacing. And I think that's part of it. I'll tell you what, though. Second time now really honing in on Anthony Black. I like this guy a lot. I'm such a fan of his. He plays – he's so long. He plays incredibly hard, and I just think he has the tools to be a very good long-rangey defender on top of an offensive player. Again, we talk about mold. He fits the mold for me of types of players I really like. So,
I really like him too. And now, based on your enthusiasm for him, I'm going to circle on the calendar the Bennedict Mathurin Anthony Black matchup so we can compare those 2 guys, because you clearly like Anthony Black a lot more than Bennedict Mathurin. Just going to call you out right now. I'm going to get it out there right now. Indiana Pacers PR.
Oh, no.
Listening to this.
Oh, no.
Adam is all about Anthony Black, does not give Bennedict Mathurin much love at all. No, obviously I'm teasing.
I don't like where this is going, man. So it's always being you're probably going to be right about these more often than not. Another mailbag question. I like this one. What current team would be most fun if we could drop Peak Legler onto the roster? I like this one. This is more a question for you. So Peak Legler, we're talking prime Legler here. What team would you want to be dropped onto and join the lineup?
It's Golden State. And the reason is because it's not just because I was a shooter and they take a lot of threes. No, the game wasn't played that way in the 90s when I played, in terms of stylistically with all that off-ball movement. But I'm just telling you, anybody that played against me that knew I was a freak about my conditioning and how I could run and move and cut and what I created for myself off the ball. Now, depending on the system, some teams I had more of an opportunity to do that. Some I didn't. Like when I was in Washington, think about this. On one team, we had Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, and George Mirasan. Okay, so guess where the ball was going to go? Most trips into the left block. Somebody was going to catch the ball in the left block, and then I was going to space out at the top of the key or the opposite wing and kind of wait for these double teams and knock down shots. Other teams, I was in Dallas, had more of an opportunity to run, and I loved that because I was relentless in running guys into the ground and knowing they were going to wear out before I was, and you're going to run into a shot. So the fact that Golden State values all that off-ball movement and running, man, I lived for that. And so I would love to see what that style would have been like with the ball hopping that much and rewarding your ability to move.
Yeah. I got to get you saying ball popping. You're a ball hopping guy. I'm a ball popping guy. So we're going to have
Hopping. Yeah, both.
I got to convert you to popping.
Bottom line is move that thing. That's the bottom line.
Best 5 players from Europe ever to play in the association. This is a really good one.
Well,
I'm curious your list.
I'm going through my database here on the spot. Obviously, you get Dirk, Jokic,
Giannis.
2. Giannis, there's 3 right there. So there's 3, and now you got you can start asking questions about it. Is Luka got enough of a body of work? Yeah, right. I think so. I think Luka's going to go down as one of the. Look, he's got to be on teams that win. So, and he's got a
conference finals. He's got a conference finals trip, which is pretty good. So
he does, but there's a lot still there for him. But as far as just an individual talent, I think you have to put him in there. Now you start going guys like who else would be in there? Pau
Gasol, Marc Gasol,
Tony Parker.
Tony Parker, I think. Yeah, he's in the mix.
Drazen Petrovic, who's a guy that a lot of people, the younger listeners, don't know who the heck I'm talking about right now, but Google Drazen Petrovic. By the way, speaking about real quick story, speaking about moving without the ball, and this is the late great Drazen Petrovic, died tragically in a car accident on the Autobahn in Germany. So we had the same agent, and he was with the Nets, and I was in South Jersey, and so he's like connected us. Hey man, you want to go up and get some workouts in with Drazen? This is one summer, and I went up there, and I thought I was going to die, and I was a guy that really prided myself in how hard I worked. I mean, I thought I was outworking everybody. I couldn't believe what this guy was doing on a daily basis. And his game reflected that again, constant motion, relentless running, super talented scorer. And so, am I forgetting anybody? Because I think Petrovic's a guy who would have to get in the discussion.
Yeah, I'm always so curious about him. Another guy from the 90s that is sort of has this mystique is Arvydas Sabonis. Now, obviously, he came over late, so maybe if we're just talking NBA career, but what do you remember about him?
I'll tell you exactly what I remember. It's a great story. I was in high school in Richmond, Virginia, and at the time, University of Virginia had Ralph Sampson, 3-time college player of the year, okay? First player to do that. They played an exhibition game when Ralph Sampson was at University of Virginia against the Russian national team at the Richmond Coliseum. And I went down there. And, of course, we'd heard about this Arvydas Sabonis guy. And I'm telling you right now, when you watch those 2 guys play, you were kind of like, oh, my goodness. Like, this guy might be better than Sampson. He first of all, he'll go down as one of the top 5 passing big men of all time. Yeah. And he was thin back then. He put on a lot of beef and brawn when he got to the league, and particularly he was in Portland. Had a head the size of a refrigerator. I remember that. His head was just massive. His hands were massive. And
Andre the Giant style, really, just the proportions.
Man. And he was for a guy that big to be that skilled with his ball handling and passing and just playmaking, super impressive.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to look at some others like Peja and Vlade, Kukoc, Shrimp. Those are honorable mentions, I think. I think we're going with Jokic, Dirk, Giannis.
Forgetting. Well, I know one guy that's going to probably join that list here in the next several years. How about
Victor
Wembanyama?
Wembanyama. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we might put him in there, but let's give him a few years. All right.
Yeah, let's wait and see. I like this question here. Can Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün be on the same team given their individual play styles? Now, what's interesting about this one to me, and I think we got to talk, we probably need to talk Rockets next week because they're on a bit of a heater right now.
Yeah.
And those two players right now are a plus 17.1 net rating. That's enormous. When those two guys are on the court, they have a plus 17. So part of me wonders this question, if it's an old question, we're thinking about last year. You have a new coach in there who I think is probably bringing some discipline, just knowing what he brought to Boston, bringing some discipline to a young group. They have some good wins over their belt, 2 against Sacramento, now 1 against the Lakers the other day. To me, I actually think these skill sets mix if they can become disciplined and focus on the right things. You have Şengün, who can bring the defense outside a little bit, great at the handoff game, just good at seeing the court, good passer. And then you have Jalen Green, who benefits from having a good handoff player. So to me, I actually think they can play together, and the numbers so far this year bear it out. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, I think the question is because of the attacking, scoring mentality of Jalen Green, and he's not a guy that's going to necessarily set people up or facilitate. I kind of agree with you though, and I think it's certainly a relationship that organization needs to cultivate to make sure that there's always a comfort level between those two guys. So I kind of agree with you that two young players this talented together should work. I wouldn't focus as much on the fact that Jalen Green is just like this, head down scorer. I'm going to go and attack every time I get it. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to freeze him out or he's going to get frustrated or they can't play together, because I think Green's going to create opportunities for him just based on his ability to attack defenses and break them down and give him some space to do the things he likes to do. So I kind of agree with you. I don't necessarily think this is a oil and water situation.
They just got to grow. I mean, they're both, I would say, immature players. And, this year is a big hey, let's see if both of them kind of get over the hump and start to become more refined, more mature. And early returns are good, especially this last week was really good for them. They might pop up later in the Who Won the Week segment. This is the next question. What is the next evolution in basketball? We've hit a peak in the modern era with everyone shooting threes. What's next?
We're in it. We're living it on a nightly basis. And by the way, I don't necessarily agree with the question. We haven't necessarily reached a peak with the 3-point era. I mean, I really don't know that we have because you think about what's going on right now with every generation of players. And right now there are kids out there that are 12 to 15 years old that are starting to get into serious basketball for the first time on travel teams and AAU teams and that kind of thing. This is what they're watching every night. And guess what else they're watching? They're watching who's getting what in terms of contracts. They're seeing who's signing what. Okay. So, and they're seeing guys that you wouldn't think have the freedom to take side step threes and step back threes or one pass up the floor threes, with nobody ahead of you except 3 defenders. They're seeing it every night and they're realizing nobody seems to have a problem with this. And it looks like these are the guys that get the most opportunities. And this is what the league looks like. Well, now I'm going to start adding that. And guess what else is happening? Bigger and bigger players are adding this. It's not just the guards anymore. Now the bigs, 6'10" and up, these guys are adding that to their game. And they see the perimeter play of some of these big guys, and they want to play that way. So I don't know that we have seen, believe it or not, the peak of 3-point shooting. So I think before you start thinking about the next thing, let's see if at any point this starts to peter out or start to go in the other direction, because there's this evolution of bigs that come into the league that want to play in the paint. And now we're going to cater more toward those guys. I don't know that that's headed, but I don't think that's anytime soon. So I think we're going to continue to see an upward tick in threes for a while. So I think when you say what's the next thing, I think we're in that next thing right now.
More of the same. Steph Curry, we always say there'll never be another Steph. Steph might be the new Steph. Steph is shooting 47% on threes this year, taking 13 a game. That's, even for Steph Curry, that's absurd. Now it's early, he'll go through slumps or what have you. But, to your point, the limit might be higher than we think. And then I think another thing here, as the game becomes more international and opened up to more and more countries and reaches of the earth, we're finding taller players. I mean, when you
Yeah.
limit yourself to the US, there's only so many 7-foot people. But when you go to the world, okay, now there's all kinds and you start to develop them. So I do think we've seen the league get longer on the wings, and we see a 7'4" Victor Wembanyama. That's the thing that I wouldn't be surprised. Cooper Flag coming in as a 7-foot wing type player. I wouldn't be surprised if our 2s, 3s, and 4s started to reach 7 feet more regularly. And Kevin Durant is less of an anomaly 10 years from now. You start to have guys that are just 6'11" with good perimeter skills. I think that'll be more and more common as well. So the stretching out of the game is part of it. Last one from the mail.
That's a good point. And real quick, I just want to add on to that for those that you dropped the name there that I've been talking about for 2 years. If you're not familiar and you're listening to this with Cooper Flag, you better do yourself a favor and go check out some Cooper Flag videos. I think he's going to be the first pick in the draft. In what is it? Is he the class of 2024?
He
right?
reclassified. So yeah, he reclassified.
Yeah,
so
he reclassified. He's going. Yeah.
So
So he this is one of the best American-born prospects like we've seen in a long time.
Right.
He does it all, and he does it on both ends. He put up stat lines in the EYBL, which is the top AAU circuit league in the country. Normally the best players in that league that end up being lottery picks, those guys average like 21, 22 points a game, probably the top guys in the EYBL Nike circuit. This guy's was putting up stat lines of like 38, 15, and 10 blocks.
Yeah.
Like, just watch the videos and look, and he's got it all: deep range, mid range, great bounce, and an edge to him. He's got a nastiness to him that bodes well for him getting to the league. He's going to Duke. He just committed. So you get to see him for a year at Duke, and then you're going to see him in the league. And I think he's going to probably be the number 1 pick when he comes out.
It's one of those things like nobody broke the 4-minute mile. And once it was broke, everybody started to break it. And I just kind of feel like the NBA is that way, where a guy like Cooper Flag 20 years ago maybe is more of a forwardy type player doing forward type things. But because the NBA has opened up the possibility of what 7-footers can be, now he's a little bit of everything. He's an everything type player, not just a forward type player. I think we'll see more and more of that. Last question here from the mailbag. What teams have been the most fun for you to watch this year? Or what parts of basketball are most enjoyable? I like this one. It's early, but what are the teams that you right now are saying are the most fun?
I think one team for me would be Philly. I think that there's just a lightness in the air with this group that Maxey gives them because of his bounce and buoyancy and smile and fun and exuberance, and he's unflappable. He just keeps coming. That has something that I think they've installed between the Ben Simmons issues that they had what he turned into at the end of his time in Philly, and then the drama, and then you go and you bring in Harden in his place, and certainly some nights it looked like they might be unbeatable, that combination, but then you get to the playoffs and everybody's on edge because you're waiting for him to struggle, and he would repeatedly in big spots. It's been hanging over their head now for a number of years. Not to mention the injuries they had early in their career for Embiid and Simmons. There feels like a real belief with that organization, and a lot of it has to do with Tyrese Maxey now being the starter and what he brings, and getting Harden, moving on from Harden, moving on from Simmons. You've got a new coach in there, so some fresh thoughts there as well for that group. And so I think Philly for me would be the top of the list. I'm really enjoying watching them nightly.
They're definitely up there. And you're right. They play a much more fun style of basketball. So that's part of it. I mean, for me, I'm a Denver guy, of course. I've just loved watching the Nuggets, obviously because it's personal to me, but also, I mean, the Jokic style of play to me is my favorite style of basketball there is. We've mentioned Minnesota. They're high on the list for me.
I like watching Sacramento a lot, more when De'Aaron Fox plays. To me, they're a fun team to watch. I like the fact that they've got a number of role players that were almost kind of like outcasts from other places that have gone there and really found their importance in the league and more relevance because they're on a good team. So I think Sacramento's a really fun team for me to watch.
Yeah, and then the last one we talked about today, but the Pacers, they're just always a fun watch. They move the ball, they shoot the ball, they play. You mentioned Philly having fun. They have fun. They have a lot of fun. Legs, let's get out of here as we do every Friday by talking about who won the week. Who won the week in the association? I'm going to give you a couple candidates here, and then I'll let you kind of give your answer. Dylan Brooks, much maligned, got some high-profile defensive assignments this week and did a great job, helped lead the Houston Rockets to a 4-0 record. You could look at Anthony Edwards, who was 3-0 this week. He averaged 32.7 rebounds, 7 assists. He was a plus 80 over the course of those 3 games. That's the highest of anybody over the last week. And of course, he had that incredibly clutch overtime against the Boston Celtics. You could go with Jokic, who led the Nuggets to a 4-0 record this week. His numbers, it's like we have to grade Jokic on a curve. He averaged 33, 14, and 9, which is insane numbers, but also kind of his average. And then I thought he played 3 perfect games over the course of the weekend. Those are some of the guys I had down as potential candidates. Where did you go?
I'm going to go in a different direction because I think for this one, last week I went with Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
The way he played in the start to the year that their team had. So this week, instead of going with a player, I'm going to go with a team, and I just talked about him. I'm going with Philly. It's because of, well, number one, they're 7-1 right now. They've won 7 straight. It's also because of that showdown with Boston.
Yeah.
And Boston comes in there, and you look at the way Philly's season ended a year ago, right? And that was a critical turning point in that series, Game 6 in Philadelphia. And then, of course, Boston went out, blew them out in a Game 7 at home to end their season. So now you get Boston this early in the year. Boston doing incredible things offensively. They've added pieces with Holiday and Porzingis. They almost look unbeatable at times. And Philadelphia not only beats them, the type of game that it was really important for Philly to win against that team. It was more like an alley fight, lower scoring, big possessions late in the game that Philadelphia was able to manage and get out of there. So I think I give it to Philly right now. If they lose that game to Boston, despite all the things I said about them and moving on from Harden and the way Maxi's played, you lose to Boston. It's almost like getting hit over the head, basically the way the Philly season just ended, right?
Yeah.
It's like getting hit over the head and reminding you, you know what? You guys are off to a great start. You don't have Harden. Maxi's playing great. You still got to deal with us. You still got to deal with us. So that I think that really gives that team a big boost, man. A lot of confidence going forward that maybe they have enough to upset that Boston-Milwaukee train wreck that we think's coming.
I love how much you reference these, I don't want to call them moral victories. That has a negative connotation, but sometimes it is important to send these messages early in the year. And I think back to Nuggets-Lakers in opening night. The Lakers made a point to let everybody know that was a big game. We're going to send a statement. And instead, they lose by 20. And I have to think there was a little bit of a psychological thing there of oh, man, maybe we actually just aren't good enough and, this or that. So for the 76ers, I think it's the opposite. That could have happened to them. Instead, they sent the message to Boston that things are different for Philly this year. And I think that's a great pick for who won the week. Let us know in the comments down below on YouTube who you think won the week. Let us know your comments on Bennedict Mathurin. Whatever you have on the show, we're reading them. I'm personally seeing every single one of them. So I always appreciate you guys interacting with the show. And as I mentioned, this show will become more and more interactive. Heading into the weekend, we have the in-season tournament. It's back, legs. This in-season tournament this weekend. Big games. Oklahoma City, who is 0-1 in the in-season tournament, plays Sacramento. If Oklahoma City wins that one, they're right back in the fold to winning, their group play. If they don't, they're probably eliminated. Lakers Suns is probably the 2 best teams in their pool. They go head-to-head in the in-season tournament tonight, so that's a big game for who advances out of that one. The Clippers play the Mavericks, another one. Those 2 teams are behind Denver in their pool. Denver 1-0, Mavs 0-1. Clippers haven't played. If the Mavs lose that one, they're out basically for the tournament. If the Clippers lose that one, we have a little round robin thing going. And then the Nets and Celtics, I think those are all good in-season tournament games. Look at me, legs. I'm into the in-season tournament standings already.
Listen, man, somebody's paying you on the side. You are hyping this in-season tournament, man. You must have money on this or something. But I want to give one piece of advice to all the people that are going to watch those games. If you turn the TV on, all right, and you think there's something wrong with the color of your television, don't go and start adjusting. It's the court. Look at this wild court, and that tells you right there, wow, okay, this game has a little bit more meaning than your typical regular season game.
Yep. Hey, I'm into it, man. You're right. Wear your sunglasses when you watch it. That's it for us this week, guys. We appreciate everybody that's been watching all along. Our 6 shows under the belt now. We're back every week. We try to add more and more layers to this show, guys. So I'm excited for where it's headed. If you haven't already, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Say something nice about Legs. Say something nice about me. Say something nice about the show. And then, of course, on YouTube, where we're really trying to build our live audience. Go ahead and subscribe there. All City, All NBA Podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone.
like the mayor.